Hey guys, welcome back to Manicure Custom Guitars. And today is part 3 and the last part of my refret tutorial. You can find the link of my previous episode just up here. Now in this episode we're going to trim down the frets, level the frets, and then at the finish we're going to crown them. So let's roll the intro and we can begin. Okay guys, so at this stage, the next step will be to trim down the excess of the frets. You can use an appropriate cutter for this kind of job, but I don't have it. I just have a normal cutters, which work really well for this kind of job. But still, after I cut with these cutters, I go with the file and make everything flush, because this leaves a bit of extra material. That's just it. Still, if you use a flush cutter for these tips, I would recommend to go over a file still to flush everything down. The best way, since I have a vise, is to put everything in a vise. If you are curious, this is a homemade Moxin type vise. If you don't have something like this, I would recommend you to look into it. Let the airplane pass. I'm covering the cutters just because I don't want little pieces of metal flying to my face. Here I have various files with various grits. This is the more coarse, while this is the more fine. And with the file, you need to flush down to the edge of the binding in my case. Now usually I will start with the big one, but since I have a binding on this neck, I will easily go starting with the medium one, then finishing up with the fine one. Now at this point I would recommend to file towards the back of the neck rather than filing towards the fretboard, because if you file towards the fretboard, there is a big risk that you pull the fret out. Just to avoid that, I would recommend to file along to the edge, to the back of the neck. Just be very careful, since I have a binding. I'm being very careful not to dig into the binding. In fact, I'm leaving just a smidge of material. So then, after I come with a beveling block, which I can use to even file them down at 90 degrees, then coming with the bevel. So now I'm just leaving just slightly material just before I hit the binding. Something else I want to mention, usually I mask down the neck, the side of the neck, but in this case, since I'm refinishing the neck after the refret, I'm not really worried about if I hit the back of the neck. Now, at this point, I just repeat everything on the other side, and then I can come with the beveling file and flush completely down to the side these frets and then do the bevel. This is my homemade beveling, fret beveling block. There isn't much into it, it's just a block of wood. There's a bevel cut of 30 degrees at one side, and right at the edge of the bevel cut there is a slot which I have a file into it. Now I can use this block to do a bevel edge, or I can use it to file down at the edge to make it flush, and then coming down with the bevel edge. Now in fact that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to first of all flush down the frets, and then I just bevel them. Now what I do with this vise, I like to clamp down the headstock with the vise so the neck won't move at all. Okay. And obviously when you feel that the file is sliding down, not cutting, it means that I'm at the binding. That's one side. Now I can go with the bevel side. And when using something like this, what I found is to relax your body. Relax, let the file do the cut, and not putting so much force into it. You need to apply a certain amount of force, but you don't have to go with your full body, because there's a risk that the block will go to the side and cut a groove along the frets, which happened to me quite often actually. So yeah, that's something you have to go. And if you've done this before, you notice that the end side of the fretboard, there will be much more work to do than on the top side of the fretboard, because area by area there is more material in the bottom half of the fretboard than the top half of the fretboard. So what I like to do is to give more attention to the end side of the fretboard, and then when the bevel is done, I just move the forward side. Okay, now other side, I'll do other side off camera, and then we'll be back for the dressing of the fret. So now that the fret ends are trimmed to size and beveled down, it's time to do the leveling and crowning of the frets. Just before we start with this step, it's important to make sure that the neck, that the fretboard, is straight. Now I'll do that by using this. It's a straight edge with notches to specify scale length. This is a piece of 5mm aluminum bar. This is homemade. You can buy them ready from various luthier suppliers online. And basically what you want is a nice straight fretboard, and a nice trick to do in this case is to put a light behind the edge, the straight edge, and see if there's light leaking from if there's a gap between the fretboard and the straight edge, and then adjusting the fretboard accordingly. Now, I did this off camera since I have a light just right above me. So now we can start with protecting the fretboard by masking the fretboard with masking tape. Here I'm using two types, a half-inch size tape, masking tape, and an inch size masking tape. Now, when it comes to this step, this masking tape dispenser, it will be your best friend, because it will save you a lot of time and a lot of work. Now that the tape is done, it's time to mark the frets. So when we come with the leveling beam, we know where are the high spots and the low spots. Now, throughout my career, I discovered that a blue permanent marker works well for marking down the frets. Everything is good to mark down, but when you're removing material, the blue marker will be much more visible than, for example, using a black permanent marker. And that is something that I discovered throughout my experience in building guitars. And that's another reason why you want to protect the fretboard, because if you, for example, here I did it, I went a bit overboard on the tape. If there wasn't any tape, I would have gone on the maple fretboard in this case, which is not protected. And yeah, you will clean it with an alcohol, but still, especially the maple, the marker will go a bit inside the pores, and that will leave a nasty mark on the fretboard for sure. Now, at this point, I take my leveling beam. This is just a small spirit level without the spirit level, which I converted into a leveling beam. I tape down a piece of sandpaper. This is 150 grit, which is already used, so it's kind of finer. I don't like using a leveling file because I found out that it will leave obviously rougher marks when you finishing the frets. So this system, I prefer it much more than leveling file. Just go over the frets. I'll do it in a way that I cover everything. For example, I'll go like this, back to center, and forward stroke on the other side. In this case, I make sure that I cover all the area of the fretboard, not just I put more pressure on a side than the other one, because that will result in an uneven fret level. And if you remember well, this neck has a 0 fret, and if you're wondering, I treat the 0 fret as a normal fret when it comes to leveling, which it makes no difference than any other fret. I don't I don't put a lot of force, a lot of pressure with this beam, because you don't want to risk that you bend the neck. I just let the sandpaper do its work. And I can see that I have some more material to leave for these couple of frets. Now, when it comes to crowning, I marked again the top side of the frets with the marker, and now using this file I will do a crown on the top of the fret again, because I flattened them down when I did the leveling. Now, what about this file? This file has a safe edge, which on this side of the file there are no cutting teeth. And this is important so to avoid digging down in the fretboard wood. Now you can buy special crowning files, you can buy files with safe edge just for this purpose. But to be honest, this was a $2 find in a junkyard sale. So it was a good find. Now, when crowning, what you want to do is obviously to create a little crown on the top of the fret. Now, the top of the fret at this point is flat because we did the leveling, and that's why we need to recrown it, basically. So the string will hit that top point of the fret. Now, in order to do so with this file, is to file down in a triangular way from the side of the fret turning to the center of the fret, like so. And with that marker, you can see the progress that you're doing. What you need to get is just a thin line of marker in the middle, and at that point you know that the crowning of that fret is done. After I finish the crowning, I like to get a piece of 400 grit sandpaper, cut it in a small piece, and what I like to do is to wrap the sandpaper between my fingers like so, and go over them in this way. like so. It will remove those sharp edges of the file, and then using my finger as a sanding block, kind of, I'll go through on top of the fret. Now, for 100 grit, it won't remove material as much to alter the height of the fret. It just will remove the scratches that are left on the top of the fret. And this is like kind of the first step into the polishing procedure. After the 400 grit, I like to go through them with a piece of Scotch-Brite. This is the gray one. And this will be the second stage of my polishing. And after the Scotch-Brite, I like to use a piece of 4/0 steel wool, and this will be kind of my last step of my polishing of the polishing of the frets. So guys, that's it for today. I hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something from it. If you're new to my channel and you're enjoying what you see, I invite you to subscribing to my channel and hit that notification bell so you'll be aware about my future releases. I do guitar and CNC related content. And to the new subscribers and to the old one, take care and goodbye.